Yeah. And then I.
Germany has been denazified. And of course, nowadays, very unfortunately so, certain political parties, like AFD in particular, seem to be flirting with the idea of returning to Nazi Germany, which is very disturbing, my friends, very disturbing. But, for the most part, Germany has dropped, as discussed in ideology. And the same should be done with Russia. A de-Russification of the occupied territories and deputinization of actual Russian territories. That is what needs to happen after this war is over. I heard today Keir Starmer himself, when he was talking to Zelensky in their last meeting, that he made a quick mention about rallies that happen here at 10 Downing Street. Well, my friends, I'm quite certain that we are the target of that particular reference. And it's good. It shows that although we don't see politicians standing here in front of us with a gaping mouth, listening to every single word we say, we do not do that. Although that doesn't happen, there's still an effect. We are noticed. We do matter. And a united people who send the same message, a coherent message, a specific message, will be heard by many. That, my friends, is what we do here. And the message we have is simple. A message of unity for the people of the free world. And a message of unequivocal opposition against the Russian terrorist regime, the enemy of the free world, the enemy of humanity. For of course they are, my friends. They have attacked a country that has given up the third biggest nuclear arsenal in the world because they wanted a few more lands. Think about it. The biggest country in the world in size, Russia. And it's the country with the biggest hunger as well, to continue to expand until there's nowhere to go, nowhere to expand to. What's the point? Putin said so himself. Russia has no borders. Well, my friends, his words have a very clear meaning, it seems. Russia has no borders because Putin plans to expand until either he is stopped or until there's nowhere else to expand to. And nowadays, my friends, it would be foolish to call Russia a superpower. It would be foolish to call Russia this big player in the world stage. Although Trump doesn't deserve to real superpowers by placing himself on equal footing with Putin, which may give that illusion to some. But Russia is a waning power, my friends. Russia is a local power at best. And it's all the more frustrating and embarrassing that the free world still finds the need to talk to us as if their words mattered at all. Russian words do not matter. What matters is the word of their sponsor, of their colonizer, of the CCP. Make no mistake, my friends. In the latest meeting between Trump and Putin in Alaska, it is not a coincidence that Putin has completely, obviously in the future, he completely denied the presence of American or European troops in Ukraine post-war. And he flirted with the idea of having Chinese troops there. What a surprise. I mean, my friends, does anybody here truly think that Xi Jinping's China is neutral in this current situation? Does anybody here actually possess that terrible, perhaps sometimes even adorable naivete, an illusion that China has nothing to do with this whole thing? No, my friends. Obviously, they have a lot to do with this situation. China is one of the few lifelines of the Russian terrorist regime. Make no mistake, the Russian terrorist regime, it presents itself to their own people as if they were fighting all of NATO at once. Oh, of course we're struggling. We're fighting against NATO. Nonsense. The Russian terrorist regime has actually gotten about as much or perhaps even more aid from their allies that Ukraine got from theirs. Look at North Korea, sending troops from their own military to fight for Russia against Ukraine. Sending them the biggest amount of shells, more than any other country has sent them. Look at Iran, providing Russians with the drones, with the technology to manufacture their drones as well on their soil, to attack Ukrainian cities every night. Look at China, continuously trading with Russia and giving them components that can be used for weapons, but just staying one step further from full, complete, open support. We must see through this, my friends. China is not an ally of Europe. The United States is an unreliable ally. That is why the message is clear. Europe must unite, and Europe must choose its own path together. Europe, unite! Europe, unite! Europe, unite! Europe, unite! Europe, unite! World, wake up! 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 Russia is a terrorist state! 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 Stop! Russia, stop the war! 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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals! 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 Seize Russian assets! 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 More sanctions on Russia! 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 No trade with 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 Russia! My friends, we all know this place that we stand in right now is a very important state. It's a very important place for the British people. Vital. Over there we have perhaps one of the most important monuments, the cenotaph. Memoir for the heroes who died in the World Wars. In the Second World War in particular, my friends, the United Kingdom stands up. For it is the only country that has opposed Nazi Germany from the beginning of the war all the way till the end. Some have lost the struggle. Some have joined the evil side. and others started the war on the side of Nazi Germany. I am of course talking about the Soviet Union, who loves to point at themselves and call themselves the saviors of Europe, the ones who beat fascists, you see. My friends, this is a lie, and this needs to be understood as such. The Russian terrorist regime back in the day, the Soviet Union, started World War II happily on the side of the Nazis, attacking Poland from the east as Hitler was attacking Poland from the west. They have signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Treaty with each other, which split Poland in half to Hitler, half to Stalin. What a duo, am I right, my friends? But yet, we still hear these Russophiles saying, oh, you know, Stalin is saved Europe. Спасибо деду за победу. This is what they say, the Russians. They say thanks to grandpa for the victory. And they're mentioning Stalin, of course. What a foolish nation. What a foolish ideology. Do they truly believe that it was Stalin's struggle that beat the Nazis? If it were not for Stalin, the Nazis would have never grown to the level of power they had. They would have not had access to the Soviet metals, to the Soviet fuel, and to the Ukrainian grain. The Soviets have stolen from the Ukrainian people, forcing them to starve to death in 2 Holodomors they have perpetrated before even the beginning of World War II. My friends, let's not forget about that as well. Just as we did not forget about many other important genocides perpetrated by those who were allowed to do as such in their time. And so that we do not forget, my friends, I invite you all, for the people who have died, for the people who have suffered, for the people who are dying and suffering now, defending the freedom of the still yet free world, I invite you all to observe a minute of silence. Thank you. It is very important for all of us, my friends, to remember what happened, so that we do not commit the same mistakes made in the past. For the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again while expecting different results. We must not fall in that camp. We must stay away from the ranks of the insane, from the ranks of the Russophiles, from the ranks of those who have lost hope and given themselves to nihilism. To say, nothing makes sense, there's no truth in this world, I'm not into politics, all politicians are the same. This is a dangerous belief, my friend, very dangerous. For if you believe that all politicians are the same, that politics is phenomenal, absolutely irrelevant, if you truly believe in that, well, my friend, that we are all done for, that nothing makes sense. But I disagree with that idea. I believe that even though there has been a clear tendency for democratic backsliding in the free world lately, a clear dilapidation for numerous freedoms and rights that the people in the free world have, I believe, my friends, that there's still hope, for we can still speak about this. As long as we can speak, we should use our voice. For the day that we are muted forever, our will to send a message will be irrelevant, as it is in modern day Russia. Back in the day, when Putin had not established his base of power yet. Back in the day when his power was still relatively fragile, perhaps there would have been a chance for the Russians. Thank you very much. Thank you. Perhaps there would have been a chance for them to have a different future. But now it's very difficult. Now, perhaps only with the aid of the free world can we all be free from this happy grandpa, as Prigozhin liked to call him. The late Prigozhin, of course. As you well know, Prigozhin was giving some inconvenient truths about the Russian regime. He was a war criminal. He was condemnable. He deserved what he got. However, just because somebody is evil doesn't mean that the truth they may speak suddenly becomes a lie. It does not. And what he said about the Russian regime, what he said about the reasons for this war, was reality. He was saying himself that this idea of Nazis in Ukraine was ridiculous. And he's been fighting against the Ukrainians for years, and he still didn't fight these imaginary Nazis the Russian terrorist regime loves to speak of so much, so loudly, so vehemently, such an inspired way. They lie so much, my friend. And the funny thing is, some of their lies contradict each other, as oftentimes happens with lies. And Prigozhin was killed by the Russian terrorist regime, not for the crimes he has committed against the Ukrainian people, not for the crimes he has committed in Russia, as he was a criminal in Russia before he was as such in Ukraine, but for telling the truth. It is a tale as old as time, a tale similar to the tale of Gilles de Rais, Bluebeard as is sometimes known, an individual who committed all kinds of atrocious acts and then was killed, was executed, but not for his crimes, but for the wealth he had amassed. That, my friends, is a tragedy that we see very often in our world. It's a tragedy we hope will not remain with humanity forever. But at the very least, we should try our best to minimize the flaws of human beings as we can. For if we do not, if we give in to our worst qualities, then at that point, what's the point of living? But there is a point of living, my friends. To become better, to find a purpose. There is a purpose right now in this cause that we speak of. The purpose of bringing peace back to Europe. For if Ukraine falls, many more will follow. And at that point, my friend, it doesn't matter what kind of an isolationist government some countries in Europe have. They will all be under the boot of the Russian terrorist regime with the full support of CCP China. If Ukraine falls, make no mistake, Taiwan will be invaded. That is certain. That is why we invite everybody to join us, send this message alongside with us, so that a greater calamity can be prevented. There's so much to say always, my friends, and I'm afraid we will have to start wrapping up soon. I'd like to end with a very interesting quote. It's a quote that's very old, a quote very much classical of British politics. A quote by an individual called Benjamin Disraeli, who was making another quote about his political opponent, Ewart Gladstone. He said, "The difference between a misfortune and a calamity is as follows. If Gladstone fell into the fence, it would be a misfortune. But if somebody rescued him, it would be a calamity." He said so because, although he respected his political opponent as a learned man, he despised his existence, for he was making his policies very difficult to push forward. But that, my friend, is the sign of a healthy political system. When you have a strong coalition and a strong opposition, when you have different sides that criticize each other and come to better solutions together via that criticism, that is a good political system. Unlike what we see in the Russian terrorist regime, unlike what many leaders in Europe and in the free world as a whole are flirting with, for them, authoritarianism, it always results in something colloquially called authoritarian brain rot. This brain rot, my friend, is based on nepotism, of course. When you choose the people who are the most loyal, instead of choosing the people who are the most capable, that is when your political system begins to die. And Russia has been dying for a very long time now. It's about time we gave them a hand and put them out of their misery at long last, so that a new page can be turned in the world's history, and so that Europe can finally be unafraid of petty dictators and its border threatening them with invasion and genocide. That is what we speak of here, my friends. That is our message. And for those who disagree, they're welcome to come here and ask us a question. For those who agree, join us. We always welcome people who support us. Слава Україні! Слава нації! Україна! 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 Героям України тричі! Слава! 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 Ворогам України тричі! Смерть! 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 And now, my friends, we're going to end this rally as we started it with the Ukrainian anthem. Слава Україні! Слава нації! Смерть ворогам! Україна! Понад усе! Україна! Понад усе! Україна! Понад усе! Героям України тричі! Слава! 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 Ворогам України тричі! Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
One of the
Можу показати.
Куди?
Почекай. He was killed by the Jan, your last.
Oh, what are the flavors?
It's different. All different, I don't know. Up to you. Anyone.
What is this? I don't know what flavor it is.
You can read here.
I'd like to have meat. Actually,
Selective, yeah.
what chicken? Because if it's not, if it's you know, if it's for what does it say? It doesn't actually say on there. Not white bread though. No. Prefers.
You want a chicken or
Oh,
not?
yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay?
Ah, Lucy, thank you so much. Thanks.
Ну, ти туди-сюди їздиш.
Та ні, я планувала в місяць приїхати в кінці місяця, ми якраз там довозимо останні речі, вже все. Тож, от я вчора приїхала, вже в неділю буду, якраз, ну я вже в неділю не буду, бо я якраз і буду їхати в аеропорт.
Як Іспанія? Супер? Чи тут головніше?
Не знаю, тут подобається, Іспанія така, знаєте, така лінівая, так що сказати. Завтра.
Окей.
Але цікаво.
То, мабуть, сюди приїдеш, ні?
Подивимось, я не знаю, складно загадувати, якщо чесно. Може раз і вже в Україну.
Мабуть.
Теж може.
Так. Так, почекай.